Hey,
What's up, everyone?
happy Monday. It's a Monday.
Welcome to episode
Trying to,
28.
is it 28?
28, Day One Dollar Zero podcast.
Trying to get this uploaded.
Coming at you live on this Monday afternoon.
Happy Monday. I'm saying it at that time. Post it. Okay. We are good to go. Good topic today. Hey, before we start that, you had a competition this weekend.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that, man. Let's go all the way back, though. Let's go all the way back to our conversations and just your conversations with me about, yeah, man, I've been on stage, did the drum thing, never done you've on stage in bodybuilding, but you I guess you've never had the confrontation of competition, of like an opponent where, like in bodybuilding, if someone wins, it's up to the judges, right? You bitch about it if you want. They're like, oh, so much better, bro.
Subjective, right?
Good word.
Yeah.
I said, I'm so much better, bro. That means subjective.
Yeah.
For all you of you that don't habla bro knowledge. That's what that means.
So I had been competing in jiu-jitsu for about maybe 2 years in November, so almost 2 years. And one of my goals at the beginning of this year was to get to a place to where I could devote a little bit extra time to training so that I could get competition in my belt.
Yeah. You did great. Broke your toe prior to.
Oh, yeah, I think so. Yeah.
I told your wife, I said, hey, they should, because you went to Voodoo Donuts after your competition.
Yeah.
And I said, Megan, they should take Eli's toe and make that a concept of Voodoo.
They would, man.
You should have a time.
That's exactly what they would.
Yeah, it was phenomenal.
Yeah, it's all cream filled like us, you know.
It was close. It was close. Did you not show fat? Is this new to you?
Yeah.
You didn't know?
No?
Yeah, it was gnarly. But you still did your competition, so you taped it all up.
Yeah.
Did your competition the next day.
It worked well, man. Yeah, so tape that up, dude. And the biggest thing with this one, like you said, our conversations, I was talking to Bill, competition is new for me, and that's something that, looking back on my childhood, I wish my parents would have encouraged competition more. You know, they were always about me doing something. You know, I was into music and art and stuff. So they kind of let me do that, but I wish there would have been some sort of push into competitive sports. Tried wrestling for a minute. That was not good. About second grade. I went through a little bit in second grade.
Really get jumped to second grade.
Oh, God. Thank you. Flag football, I think, in like third grade. I was called wrong like Eli. I could not grasp the concept of. They made me the receiver, first of all. I'm flat-footed, overweight. No idea why I was a receiver, but couldn't figure out what the hell way to run with the ball.
So Eli is pointing the finger right now.
So, long story short, I'm not the most naturally gifted athlete out there. But I know that competition is good, and I try to nurture that out of myself now as I've gotten older.
It holds you accountable, and it just lets you know, like, there's a winner and a loser. You got to show up on that day and perform. And if you don't, it's humbling. And then it's how you come back from that. Yeah, we were talking. I can't remember where we were driving. Who knows? With work and everything, and you mentioned it to me. You were like, "Yeah, I'm gonna do this competition," and you also kind of mentioned it. When you were mentioning to me, it's kind of in passing.
Yeah.
Like we were talking about something else, probably something super important, like why pretzels are salty, right? Something super important. And you're like, oh, hey, by the way, I'm gonna do this competition, and I was like, right on. And you're like, yeah, you know, I'm just gonna show up,
Get a feel for it.
Like you said it like super, like right. And I just remember looking, I was like, what the fuck did you say to me? I was like, no, bro, you're gonna take fucking heads. I don't care if you're a white belt. I don't care if you're a blue belt. Like, dude, this is when it's time to do that. Like, you're gonna go and like, how many fucking heads am I taking with me? That's how competition works. Like, that's where you get to cut loose and have some tenacity to you and figure out like how well are my abilities, regardless of belt, regardless of anything else. Who the fuck am I taking out here with me?
Yeah.
And then I remember you saying something like, well, yeah, dude, but I'm not gonna win. I'm like, I don't care. You care about that? Like, yeah, I get it. Because black belts are awesome. Who gives a shit? We just saw, what was that blue belt beat that black belt?
Mickey somebody,
He's somebody.
Yeah.
Mickey somebody just put it to a black belt.
Yep.
So again, that's what's so fun about competition, man, is at some point, especially with this type of competition, no disrespect to bodybuilding, it's just different. You got to learn how to compete against yourself, per se, because it's subjective to who says you win. But like baseball, football, boxing and mixed martial arts, jiu-jitsu. Some of those are team sports, so you're relying on teammates to do well versus some of these are very individual, but you're relying on the team to train with.
Well, and
there's a reality behind it that's good for you, man. And your belt doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like a belt doesn't matter. A record doesn't matter. Right? Like you can go in and stomp someone in the dirt that day.
It's true.
That's how that goes.
Why I like the competition that I kind of found is I'm naturally one that kind of not self-doubts, but I'll give myself
an out.
Opposite though. I'll give myself an out as to like why I won. Like with the bodybuilding shows, I'm like, there were only 8 guys in the class.
Oh, okay.
But I'm always like, if I do well at something, I try and like knock it down a little bit and find a reason why I did well.
And that keeps you moving forward, or
it's not healthy. I don't think it's a healthy trait. But that's something I'm trying to like recognize and just take the fucking win, you know, like just be good with it. And maybe it's self-doubt or something. But with this, what I like is, you know, in competition, it's like there's none of that. Like, you know that person was trying as hard as they could to stop you from doing what you wanted to do, and you still were able to prevail. Versus in training, if you get a submission, your half you is kind of like, did you let me get that, or is he just going light, or this or that. You never really know if you actually got that submission.
It's training.
Yeah, right. Yeah, which is what it's for. So the competition, I really like that aspect of it.
It allows you to just cut loose and be accountable and just understand where your full, like just where your potential's at that point, right? And we talk about this in business, and it's the same with competition. You know, like at some point you're done learning, right? And I don't mean that overall. I just mean like if you're gonna go to the gym every day and hit the heavy bag and hit the speed bag and do some shadow boxing, cool. But at some point, like there's just you're not progressing anymore. You end up just even if you're going in and you're applying yourself 1,000%, you're gonna plateau because you're missing this element of actually getting in the fight.
Very true.
And then once I'm in the fight, what is that stress and that pressure and that actual accountability of somebody punching me back? Where do I stand with that?
Yeah.
Right. Like
get up, man. Yeah.
Right. And it lets you know, like, hey, you're great at A, B, and C when you're training. You suck at A and B when you're in the ring.
Yeah.
So now you've got to go back to the drawing board and figure out like how the benefits and how you can improve those.
Yeah.
In the fight.
That reminds me of in business, the market. That's like competition. You know, it's like you can prep all you want, you can get your marketing, your sales, and your price points and your products as best as you think they can be. But then once you hit the market's going to tell you what it really thinks about your product.
And the more you delve in, you know, like something we were talking about earlier today when we talked about rebuttals, how to combat certain rebuttals that people say. It's not hard. There's not a hard rebuttal a client has for me because I'm the one that's in it every day. If you're not in it every day and you don't know market and you don't know fundamentally how to approach a listing, yeah, you're gonna get lost. Or they're gonna say something that surprises you, or you know they're gonna have a question that maybe you haven't heard yet, and you're taking the question at face value versus fundamentally what they ask. You're gonna lose. That's the bottom line. Right? Like you're gonna lose, just like these competitions. Like you started going to jiu-jitsu a lot more. Like, hey, that day's coming. I need to make sure that I'm as best prepared as possible because there's a day of accountability coming.
That's it. That's the other thing too, man. Like it's a reason, and you need this in business a lot too, and that's where you and I motivate and push each other a lot. You and I are the gym partners of business, where it's like we're showing up every day because you're here waiting on me and I'm here waiting on you, and we show up and get shit done every day.
Right.
In sports, it's a reason to go to that Friday night comp training at 7 o'clock. You know, when you'd rather be at home eating dinner on a Friday night after a long work week.
Yeah.
But it's a reason to go and push that little bit extra because you need the day of reckoning.
Dude, and a lot of people are just, you know me, I go to a weird place with this. A lot of people just go through the motions. Period. Like a lot of people just love talking about it.
Most people.
But will never get punched in their face. You know? And I think when you've got some hobbies or you've got a passion outside of work, like jiu-jitsu, there's just a lot of lessons there that apply to business. And we were talking about it after your competition. Won by submission, right? Lost by points.
Yeah.
Guy was running some circles, but you didn't give up position to get some good, learned a lot there, and it was ultimately a success for you, right? And it was just, and I'm like, man, like I'm glad you tasted that, because now you know why I try to take fucking heads in business. Because we talk about it, and people like think it's funny, and I'm like, no, listen, I'm gonna help you however I can, but don't think that I don't want my sign in the yard at your next door neighbor's house. And then whoever buys that house, I'm gonna pay them to keep my fucking sign in that yard for like another 30 days, just so you gotta keep looking at my stupid face. Like that's where I go with it. Like I love helping everyone, and I'm all about it, man. But when people break, or people don't show up to the office, or people have a little burst of some momentum as far as wanting to build a business, but they start fading, I'm just like, weak sauce, man. You're full of shit. You're running your mouth, because it is hard, man. And not to wish bad upon people, I don't. But when they start crumbling and they start breaking, I'm motivated. I'm like, hey, I'm not weak. I'm not that weak. And you saw it in boot camp. Guys started breaking and crying at night. I haven't cried yet. Cool. I'm not the weakest. Okay. How far can you take this? Like literally, I remember thinking that week 3, man. Guys were breaking. You know, like they were just mentally breaking on obstacle courses. They were mentally breaking when you were getting IT'd in the squad days. It's called initiative training. Just means they're fucking you up. Get up, sit down, push-ups, air squats until you puke, whatever. Allegedly, right? I'm trying to get boot camp. It's all sunshines and rainbows. But people would break, and I just hadn't broke. And I'm like, all right. Like I had been good at everything I'd done for the most part up until then. Like, you know, with baseball and getting picked up. Like I played hard. I didn't think I was neurotic about it. I just loved playing baseball. I don't know if I took it that serious. I was going to a realm where I'm like, I'm going to have to try my hardest at everything here, because I've never done obstacle courses. I've never shot a rifle. I mean, I'm terrible at swimming. Like, all I had was, well, if you got enough grit, you're going to find out. And when guys started to break, I was like, cool. Like, not like I wouldn't help them or pick them up or whatever. Like, I got you. But in my head, I'm thinking, like, all right, like, I'm not the weakest. Like, how far can I take this? How far am I going to go? Dude, it's very similar to business. You and I see it all the time. People with their ambitions in their mouth just popping off. Where are they at 90 days from now? You know, like, it motivates me.
It does, dude. And that's one thing that makes it super easy to listen to people like that, hear them, because we know that all we have to do is sit back and watch, right? Talk as much as they want. We know in 90 days, in 6 months, and
it's not that I want you to fail.
You're going to see the truth.
Yeah, it's not that I want you to fail. It's not that I'm hoping failure upon you. It's just, how do I correlate it? It's kind of like if my daughter, when she's 30, to be clear, brings a guy home. Cool. Look, man, I'm not gonna be cleaning my guns and doing that shit. If you don't know, walking in that door, who her dad is, well, that's a different conversation. You should probably be wearing a helmet, right? I don't know if I'm clear enough, but I'm not gonna be rude to the kid. But you gotta be around for a while before you're my guy, man. And it's not some disrespect, but you're dating my daughter, so you're gonna have to put some time in and earn some respect. And I'm not gonna be rude to you. If you come to dinner, you come to dinner, and I'll have a conversation with you. But look, man, you're not part of the family, not in a rude way. But it's gonna take some time to just earn your keep. Right. And that's the same thing with anything else I've ever had. No one was ever trying to tear me down to ruin me. Like I got torn down in the rink all the time. That was to make a Marine out of me, right? Like, you know, so on and so forth, sharpening that blade. But they weren't doing it because they hated you. It was from a place of like hardening you. And, you know, once they started like embracing you as a Marine, like you own it. And so I just think people starting to keep we see a lot of that in business, and I don't laugh at people. I'm not here to bring them down. But no, man, like you just got to show a ton before I have a certain level of respect to you toward business. And yeah, man, it motivates me. But so when it comes to like jiu-jitsu or anything else, a lot of that competition and that tenacity that comes out that you can unleash, there's a way to like unleash that in business too. 100%. And allow yourself to be your, you know, because if everything you do in life has like a cap, like you're always shooting blanks, well, like you got to go live rounds at some point. You know, we do it in the Marine Corps before you deploy it. You don't think we train with live rounds? Bro, you're going into shoot houses and then you're doing different movement to contacts with live bullets.
Yeah,
keep your head down. You're gonna get shot. Your grape's gonna go missing. Okay, like, and it's controlled and it's as safe as it can be, but you know, it has to be done. You know, before you go. And so same thing with jiu-jitsu and business. And if there's always a cap on your potential, there's always a cap on how much you allow yourself to unleash into something, because you got to be home at a certain time, or you can't work when you're at home, or you don't, or you got to do this, or you got to do that. Like, if you're just not completely getting neurotic and dove in and unleashed into something, I don't think you're going to be as successful as you hope, unless mediocrity is your goal.
And again, like you finished off right there, mediocrity is your goal. If that's what makes you happy, 1,000% okay. Just don't complain. That's it. Yeah.
100%.
Let's get into our
With
topic.
that being said, we're gonna cover a fun topic today. We haven't had many questions like this to the podcast per se, but from people that are that know us in business and know us in our personal lives. We've gotten a couple of questions. I know I've gotten a couple of questions, all a little different, but kind of wrap around the topic of why a podcast. Like, how it came about. Like, why a podcast?
They're popular. Like, they're definitely increasing in popularity. It's not this like unknown word like it was even just a few years ago.
Right.
However, it still is not mainstream. There is still a ton of growth.
There's like 250,000 podcasts versus 500 million blogs.
Yep.
What?
Yeah, dude.
Do the number on that. Like, we're not talking top 1% podcasts. Like, just podcasts in general, there's 250,000. There's like 500 million blogs.
Yeah.
Right? And like, I was listening to Gary Vee not too long ago, and then someone had a great question from me. He actually was like, oh, great question. They said, if you had to pick your podcast or your blog, one's got to go. And he was like, fuck you. But then he said, blog's got to go.
Yeah.
He said, I think the way long-form content, being able to express and articulate yourself matters. He said, just simple things like when you're listening to it on iTunes, how you can shut your screen off on your phone. So, or you can use your phone. Like, when you're on YouTube watching a vlog, like, if I go away from that screen, it stops. I can't text, I can't be on social media. You turn on iTunes or Spotify, whatever you're listening to, you can shut your screen off. You can text, you can be on social media, you can be as ADD as you want, and it's playing. So just the ability of the freeform play like that matters, and people can go back and listen to it. And so he said, and obviously with him, like, it's just regurgitated content. He's not actually sitting down to a podcast, but I think ultimately him using that platform is him just trying to get his message out, and he felt it was more valuable as well. So,
well, it's true, man.
From a guy like that, it definitely puts something into play. We didn't force it. This was your idea, and I want to go chronologically because you know me, I'm an idiot, and I want to go in order as far as how things kind of came about for us. Because that was a big thing. Is like when people that are around me, like, why? Hey, so you guys have a podcast? Yeah. Like, out of all, right? Like, because we're in real estate. It's like, really? Like, so I kind of want to go through that. Eli and I started our videos through social media, almost 2 years ago. And you and I were doing a video once a week. And they were anywhere from 5 to 25 minutes, depending on how many drugs we were on. I'm kidding. Sometimes we had some caffeine on the table, and we were going for a minute. And it was, hey, what's working and not working for us? And what we were encompassing is Eli and I always felt like we were, not in like a bougie way, not in like an entitled way, but like, hey man, there's more to us in real estate. Yeah. And we don't really want to be the real estate guy. Like, we want to crush real estate and be real estate guys, but we want there to be more to us and just allow that branding to kind of seep through. Yeah. So once a week we were talking about, hey, what's working for us and not working for us in business, in our personal lives. We were both, just expecting our kids, hadn't had our kids yet. We were just expecting, we both had boys. We both had, on the 19th, 6 months apart, but both on the 19th. Super romantic, by the way. Love that story. But for a full year, minimum, we were doing these Friday videos of like, hey, what works for us in business right now? What's working for us in our personal life? What's it like being a dad? What's it like being a dad and finding time for that and finding time for work? And how do we get creative? And hey, how does work apply to home? And how does lessons learned at home apply to work? And really just weaving them all together and just talking about lessons learned. And some of that did correlate with fitness, real estate, but just a lot of different stuff. And we got some great traction on that after we did it for a year. Some of our biggest ones were fitness or the entrepreneur stuff. We had a couple of big ones with fitness. So we're like, man, like every time we do like a fitness, video that week, there's a ton of questions and this and that. So we started making some content around that. We're like, hey, now that we have real jobs, quote unquote, right? I'm not working for a fitness company. You're not working in the gym as a trainer. Now that we quote unquote have real jobs, how are we staying fit? So we created a networking group for free, challenged the shit out of a lot of people to come in and commit to a year and go over stuff like that. And it grew from, our synopsis of that was how fitness is going to help your business and your personal life, and really understanding this diet and health and nutrition. And, hey, here's how I use it. Here's how Eli uses it, and here's how this applies to life. And it's a big part, right? I know I'm getting long-winded. I
think one little key right there that I want to talk about that networking group is not once did Will and I ask, what's in this for us?
Mm-mm.
Not once. Like we just
grew content as a kid.
Yeah, and here's the thing. Like Will's been through a ton of different life experiences. I've been through a lot of life experiences in some specific areas such as like fitness and training, nutrition, stuff like that. And the difference is that you've got information to share. And here's the thing. People out there that have been through certain things, you probably have a unique opinion, a unique voice, and we are in the age of information, and if you're not sharing those ideas with other people, you're missing out, and they're missing out too. But so anyway, my point being there, don't always think there needs to be this hook or this direct ROI in regards to whatever you're wanting to do to get your information out there.
Great point.
So we created that. We created that networking group with our buddy Gavin, and as we started building that, that's where we started really diving into content, because every week we've got to provide an hour's worth of content, progressive content, for the entire year. We had plenty. We had more. Like that course could easily be 2 years if we really laid it all out, with health and fitness and business and branding, and Gavin doing the financial side and dabbling what he likes to dabble in, and a ton of stuff. And that's where you were like, man, I think we should just dabble in some of this podcasts. So I think the reason why it's important to talk about the networking group is like that was our first long form content. People coming in, 25 people it started out with, we're down to like 12. Intentionally, right? Standard, right?
Yeah.
But that was our first form of just like long form content and being able to present, and then having enough
time every single week to really express ideologies and thought process and our position on where we come from, and just elaborating. It was way more productive than just a 5-minute video, right? Yeah. So that's where I think maybe it sparked for you, and you started thinking about it. And I didn't push it off, but I was like, yeah, all right. Like we got a ton going on. I want to make sure the team was taken care of and this and that. And then we got invited to talk on on that podcast, Greg McDaniels.
Yep. Real Estate Uncensored.
Yep, Real Estate Uncensored. Pretty big podcast. We decided to go out there and see him in person. And that's where it started shedding some light for me is, hey, man, you don't have to be the most because I wasn't sure. I was like, man, have we earned it? You know, like, have we earned something? Are we big enough to have a podcast? And you see his and you're like, oh, man, we've got more than enough content. And it's just hyper focused on people that want to learn from us. Like if this is outside of your scope, you don't have to, you don't have to listen.
Yeah.
But I started realizing, hey, okay, this is our networking group at scale. Because, dude, we're getting downloads in Australia, Germany, Philippines.
All over.
Shout out to Kate's family. It's probably them.
All over. Yeah.
but all over. So now you're like, man, we're way outside of a classroom. We're way beyond 12 or 25 people or the 10 agents that are on the team that we own. Hey, we're at scale. Hey, that's cool. Right. So now we're doing this.
Yep.
And it's also sparking some thought into you and I. We've got some other stuff with real estate we're going to start putting at scale. I'll kind of hold off on talking about that for now, but that's kind of the synopsis, I guess, if you want to add to that. But that's kind of like the story of where things go. Some of it was organic.
Yeah.
And then some of it was just putting attention where people were wanting it, and just paying attention and listening to people and just listening like, oh, this is what long form content is. And then again, understanding like the podcast is just the same thing you're already doing with your networking group. It's just at scale. So more people can tap in.
Well, to kind of go into like some of its benefits, I had been thinking about doing a podcast for a good couple of years now. I'm really into podcasts. I listen to them all the time. And I knew that was something that I would enjoy. And I like the the media and the technology and that sort of stuff behind it. So I knew for a couple years prior to even meeting Will that I wanted to start a podcast, but I also knew the commitment that goes behind it, because I did research it. I knew the commitment that went behind it. I knew how important consistency was, even more so than video. Consistency is like number one across all sort of marketing channels. Podcasts, it's triple, because I mean that's how Apple is going to rank you. That's how your listeners are going to come to expect your show at a certain time every week. Because here's the thing, it is a show. Yep. It's not just this 5-minute video that you put out that anyone can look up at any time that they want. You need to build an audience. So I knew what went behind it. So for me, it took a lot of patience, because there were a few different times where I wanted to take that leap, but something inside just told me to hold off, because I knew it wasn't right. And I knew as soon as I started something, I didn't want to quit it or go back or stop and then try it again. That's just the commitment level that we have. So as soon as I met Will, I was like, and heard him talk, I'm like, there's something there, right?
You're like, this fucking
there's
idiot.
something there. Because I knew I wanted a partner too. I didn't want to just sit there at the microphone and go off by myself. That shit's boring. I like when there's two people and different personalities that you can hear on a podcast. So when I met Will, that's kind of when those seeds started planting. And I had mentioned it a couple times, but really it took, a year of us just working together and figuring each other out, seeing where our strengths and weaknesses are, getting some good data with the team and our networking group. And then ultimately, like he said, it was getting on that podcast where it was like, all right, now's the time, right? We know we got some good value to bring. So as far as its benefits, I'd love just the long form conversation idea, right?
Dude, you know what it reminds me of?
Not
to cut you off. Actually, to cut you off. You've been cutting me off today. And this isn't a political thing. I'm not here to get into people's pants about politics. But you know when you're watching like those, like the debates on TV?
No, but yes.
Yeah. And they get like 2 minutes apiece. Mm-hmm. Okay, Schmuckatelli, it's your turn. You've got 2 minutes. Tell us your policy if you were president on healthcare.
Yeah.
He's got 2 minutes. Great. I'm like, dude, what a bummer. I wish every politician would have an opportunity to like go on the Joe Rogan podcast where he can just chat with you, and if you sound a little shady, he might give you a little hint. We're not putting up with your bullshit here, but you get 2 or 3 hours on his show to just talk and elaborate and go over just different things. And again, not to say what side I am or not am or whatever, but the point is, like, it's so hard to dial something into 2 minutes or 5 minutes, or it reminds me of like speed dating, you know, like versus long form content. It just allows you to just elaborate and express and like just give a lot more context. Like, for example, if you and I had 3 minutes to talk about why a podcast, we'd be talking about right now. Yeah. Versus, hey, so here's where we were 2 years ago. Here's how this thing organically grew. Here's what we did that was getting us attention. Here's what we started doing that started sparking thoughts that then planted the seed that grew to this. It wasn't podcasting. And maybe like you had those thoughts in your head, and that's where like once we had our networking group and you knew we had enough organization and enough content to speak on, maybe that's what sparked your thought. I never imagined, I had just never put thought behind having my own podcast. Yeah. And you weren't the first one to tell me like, hey, dude,
you got some shit.
You need to go run your mouth somewhere. And I'm like, it's whatever, man. Like I didn't necessarily envision that, but that's where your entrepreneur side comes in and just feeling the momentum. But it would be really hard if we only had a couple of minutes to say, okay, why a podcast? You're like, shit. Well, like it's just so in the now versus like, well, here's where everything kind of came from. And I think when you're talking to an audience, it's important for them to understand whether you're in real estate or not. Here's where it comes from. And I think it's important.
Well, there's something culturally that I think we're craving where you put the phones down, put them on silent. Dude, that was
me?
Of course that's you. That was timed perfectly.
It's people sliding into my DMs, Eli.
Putting your phone down, putting your phone on silent, and being able to listen. Well, literally
Brett
looking
Baird.
at his phone right now.
I
hope you know on my camera they can see you staring at your stupid phone.
It's Brett.
Yeah, put the phone down.
Don't want to know what he just said. It's not Brett. What's up, bro? What you said is not safe for children.
When I talk about craving, maybe I'm just talking about my own craving here. But I think there's something culturally to where people are craving putting your phones down and just listening to two people have a good in-depth conversation about a topic that's not bullet pointed like everything is. You know, we take our videos in 30 and 60 second clips, and there's just something refreshing about hearing two people dive into thought, man.
True. And I got two points. One is So like with you and I, back and forth, and then we plan on having some guests. We have some guest appearances coming up. You and I are going to be on other podcasts, and we do plan on having people on our podcast. What we wanted to make sure we did was lay a foundation. So before we started bringing a ton of people in, we wanted to lay a foundation as far as like the culture and the message of what we wanted our podcast to be about. And anyone that comes on the podcast, like, go take a listen. Make sure we're for you. And I don't mean cussing. I don't mean like, hey, I can slow down my, if we got some sweet old lady on the podcast one day, I can slow down my cussing. Not a problem. I don't have an issue with that. It's more so just our message and who we are and the direction of where we want things to go. That's important before we have any guests. And I didn't want to rely on other people coming to the show for entertainment and rely on other people to have a podcast, right? Like I wanted to make sure that you and I could hold our own weight as far as talking and delivering a message and delivering a value to people, not predicated upon, well, is someone going to show up to provide value? And I'm really good at asking questions, but shit, I don't know what to say.
Yeah, that's a lot of podcasts out there.
I got a lot to say. Yeah. I'm just not sure. You know, mine is just putting what I want to say in the right direction so it's not toxic.
Yep. And as far as more of the benefits, I think, you know, as far as building a following and a community and a culture around you and your brand, again, the long form content where you get to really dive into your thought process and the meanings behind you and the things you do and the things your company does, there is no better way to build a culture and community than I think those sort of loyal followers that come through a podcast.
100%. Something that the most important piece that I've discovered doing a podcast that I think is beneficial for the audience and also selfishly beneficial for me is elaborating on my thoughts. You and I deliberately, we do not script a podcast, right? Like we've got a couple bullet points. We have a topic. We've got a couple bullet points as far as like, hey, here's what I'm thinking. And usually it's like, hey, dude, what do you want to talk about tomorrow? I'm thinking of this or this. Hey, cool. All right. Yeah, I'm thinking we should talk about this, and here's a couple bullet points I had. So here's like some of the direction I want to take it, and then I'll kind of give it my thoughts. But we deliberately try not to overly script a podcast, mainly for myself. I'm a talker, as you can tell. So like even in work, like if I've got an issue going on or something that we're doing with work, you know, like I'll call Eli or we'll talk in person, and Eli can vouch for this. I will literally talk myself into a solution or talk myself into some self-awareness, you know, because when I say it out loud, it makes it real and it just allows me to process my thought a lot better. And I deliberately say it out loud. It's not because I just love to hear myself talk. The more Eli hears me talk, the more Eli understands how my thought process works. And he starts to know me better. We start to get more cohesive. And again, like if I say something out loud, I'm like, that doesn't sound right. You know, like it just helps me process. So, okay, so why do that on a podcast? Well, when people are listening, I don't just want to give them answers, right? Hey, here's why we do a podcast. This. Cool. Suck it easy. Have a great day. Go start a podcast. No, man. Like maybe you have a podcast right now and it's the absolute wrong thing for you. Maybe you don't and it's the absolute right thing for you. I don't know. But when I speak out loud and I have long form content where I'm not staring at the clock, and if it goes for an hour, cool. We're always usually right around an hour. If it goes longer, cool. But my biggest thing is just allowing people to also hear how I process my thought, how I reverse engineer stuff, how I go about my critical thinking, and how it leads me to a solution. Like I think if anything, that helps a ton of people learn how to process their own thought and get to their own conclusions of what they should do, but not predicated on what I do for myself,
right?
But more so of just sparking thought in people. And then by them hearing us out loud, it allows them to learn how to have a thought process for themselves. And then we're teaching them how to like come to their own conclusions, regardless of whether we do it or not, just coming to some end state, right? Like I think that's been the most benefit is I just want to spark that thought in you, man. Like, but it's good. I know I'm kind of repeating myself right now, but it's good for people to learn, like just hear someone think.
Well, and again, that's a culture and a community thing right there. Like when look at how the Bible is written. Like the Bible is based off of, it's all stories essentially, right? It's all stories to allow you to process those stories in your own mind and then come up to your own conclusions on how you should be acting, right? Outside of the 10 Commandments, which are very clear, do this, don't do this sort of thing. It's all stories and ideologies. That's exactly how we're teaching here, right? Just talking through stories, talking through our thought process, talking about just how we go about day to day. And hey, this story happened. This is what I thought about doing. This is what I did instead, sort of thing.
It's like
helps,
more,
man.
this is a strong statement because I don't mean it specifically for us, but I think it's kind of like what religion is intended for.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying.
Right. So if you take out the control and the weirdness of church, I'm not naming any specific church. I just know there's a lot of struggle behind church. I do think the reason why a lot of churches are successful is because of that.
That's
right.
Exactly
it's because
it.
of the storytelling and the thought processes and the sparking thought. So I think like it's the same thing. I think just humans crave that. Humans crave listening to some of those stories and then trying to figure out how that applies to them and hearing someone maybe they can relate to or they'd like to be like or they're completely different than but can take some perspective from. I think a lot of those things are just so valuable just for human instinct of how you're going to like building your own instincts up as far as how you approach your own day to day. The more you can prep for it and reason with it, the more prepared you are.
That's how cultures are formed, man.
100%.
Now
100%.
let's do this. Let's talk about, because you're gonna have guys that are in a business, and let's use HVAC. You've got like a heating and air conditioning company, and you're listening to this right now, and you're thinking, how can a podcast, bring me more business? I think one of the most important things that you can do is not talk directly about your business on your podcast.
I mean, it could go both ways.
Well, if we're looking at straight
to argue you,
if we're looking at straight,
healthy way.
We're looking at straight marketing, right? If I'm trying to, if I
were an HVAC guy, I would probably have part of my podcast on, hey, here's what you can fix on your own for free.
But
here's the top 10 reasons we come to your house when we don't need to come. I would literally give shit away for free. I'd say, hey, here's how you don't need me.
But people aren't going to go to podcasts and type in heating and air conditioning.
Maybe
they're not going to go HVAC. Where I think
now you're just kind of
where I think it works is if you've got a golf podcast, and I like golf, so I'm listening to your golf podcast, and I hear a couple little hints about how you running heating and air conditioning company, and you're nationwide, and just a little hints here and there. But I listen to you every week for the golf shit, not for the HVAC. But now when my heating goes bad, I'm listening to you that week. Oh, hey, this guy has a national
Let's go back
heating and air conditioning company.
Let's give some context.
Let's give it.
Because we also said, like, hey, things we do did not have a direct ROI. They just kind of, like, organically grew, and this is also what we're passionate about. When I talk about culture and leadership and community and entrepreneurship and just in real time, here's what we're learning, here's what we're taking from it, I'm passionate about that.
Yeah.
So what if you love comic books?
Yeah.
So I think before we talk about, hey, whether it's HVAC or whether it's this or that, I think most importantly is maybe you need some escapism, right? Like maybe
passion
work
is first.
Yeah,
passion
maybe just work
first.
is super hard, and that's not necessarily something that you want to talk about, but maybe you're just a super dad and your kid loves comic books and so do you, and you guys get on the mic and you crush it, and then maybe like you do get some followers, cool, but then maybe one day you pass away because you're old and your son is 40, but then your son can go back and listen and watch the podcast and remember his dad.
Yeah, man.
Huge.
Yep.
Right? Huge. So I think the biggest thing, again, not to shit on your HVAC guy here,
dude,
being funny, but man, you can also, a podcast, like if we're talking about like, hey, you're not an entrepreneur, or maybe you are, whatever. Maybe that is a release for you. Maybe you are super passionate about something and you love to get on the mic and talk about it or share some things with your kids, or maybe your kids are on it, maybe they're not, but do you want them to be able to go back and see it? And
that's
dude, if I could see my grandpa on a podcast, baller.
Yes.
He passed away when I was 7. I didn't know him that well, and like super heroic dude in World War II and all kinds of cool shit, right? And like I wish I'd have known more of him. And I remember trying to live up to that guy's standard when I was in the military and barely even knew the guy.
Yeah.
So imagine if we had the technology to see him. So some of that constantly grows in my head too, of just
legacy,
just your footprint that you're leaving with people that love you. So I want people to expand their mind. If you're talking, I think what I know what you're getting into is like, we've kind of covered of like why a podcast, how it's been beneficial for us. We're starting to dabble into that, and then how it applies to the audience, right?
Passion first, though. Like when you talk about your passion, you can talk about, if you're passionate about something truly, you can talk about that for days. In addition to that, If you have a business behind that passion, great. If you don't have a business behind that passion, like here's the thing, your podcast may override your business. Right?
yeah.
Like your podcast, your golf podcast make it so big that you're like, fuck this HVAC company.
We might
Like,
just have to fire a whole team, Eli.
you never know, man. You never know. But that's why passion has to come first, because that way you've either got the podcast working, bare minimum, that podcast is going to create a following, which is going to know what your actual business is.
Correct.
Thirdly, the legacy. I don't want my kid listening to a freaking real estate podcast to hear about his dad, right? I'd rather have him hear about jokes about us getting high and doing stupid crap.
Who got high? I got high.
I think we got a meme about
got high
that, bro.
as shit.
Yeah. So passion first. So passion first.
I think so too, and I definitely want people to understand, like, hey, if you can make a business out of your podcast, great. If it's solely, and I know this is cliche to say it, but if it's solely for a financial benefit, it's hard.
It is, man.
Because financial benefit is hard,
dude.
So if you're going into it just for that, like I'm not sure if you'll be successful. And
Yeah.
I want people to understand, like, before you get a financial ROI, you know, just how liberating or how fun it can be to just sit down and have a conversation. And maybe it's literally like, I know like a lot of girls have like their little
Dear
female
diary. Yeah.
Your diary? What is
I
that?
said Dear Diary.
No, that's not what I was going to say.
What were you going to say? It's like a vocal diary. It kind of is. Like you're just
okay.
kind of decompressing from the day, talking about your thoughts.
Oh, great point. Not what I was
I
going to say.
assume that's where you were going.
No. Girls have like these like mom clubs in the neighborhood. Like
uh-huh.
they play backgammon or whatever. Bungo or
Bunko.
But what if girls just got together for a weekly podcast and like drank some wine and talked about their week and their kids
Deborah,
and what they're
did you see
doing.
Deborah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you believe what Carrie did?
Well, I hope they're not naming names, right? But
yeah.
But could you? I'm sure there's some moms out there that can just relate to what those moms are going through, and it's funny, and it's like you have that already, right? Like those shows called The View.
Yep.
The problem is they're a paid network. Right, they're paid and they're funded by a network, which means what? There's political slants to it. There's an agenda with who comes on. There's an agenda with what you're allowed to talk about, right? Like Roseanne got in big old trouble with so and so and whatever. But if you have your own, it's not paid for by any network. There's nothing that's not that you can't talk about.
Yeah.
Right, like, and who knows what women in a neighborhood could get together and have some wine and talk about.
Yeah.
Dude, I hope I'm not on their radar.
Probably be hilarious.
Dude, I bet it would be hilarious.
Yeah.
Just mom stories and what kid Pete is, whatever. I can only imagine, right? Like we're dads.
Yeah.
We hear a little bit of it.
Yeah.
I can only imagine. So even something like that of just getting girls on mics and hanging out, and I think people would have fun with it because it's relatable.
Yeah.
You know, like you're driving home from work and you're like, you just relate to it. Like, oh man, that happened to me last week. And you're kind of listening to it. And I think people crave that. Like I know there's a lot of stuff out there that's high dollar and fancy and whatever, but the relatable aspect is huge for people.
It is, man.
Right? So even something like that, like it doesn't have to be anything related to work. It can just be your girlfriends that you want to invite over and like shit on your husbands for an hour. Whatever. I'm sure we have it coming.
Oh, that'd be great to listen to.
I got called a hoe. Did I tell that story?
You did.
I did.
Yeah, you did.
She called me a hoe. And then she took me to dinner.
You're not a hoe.
I am not.
You're not
Well,
a
it was in a different context.
You're not a hoe.
With a knife in her hand. She was going to kill me. No, but there's good stories there, man. And I know like Kate had her friends over this weekend. And I know her friends pretty well. So we were talking trash a little bit back and forth. And one of her friend is like super healthy. Kombucha and like cabbage and like,
terrible.
you know, dude.
Yeah.
Super healthy, not against it. And she's like, look at you. Like, she's like, come on, I'm not saying that. Dude, I got to poke the bear. I got to act like I just eat like crap.
Yeah. Yeah.
To just stab the bear a little bit. Anyway, we were having some fun banter back and forth. And then Kate was like, hi. And I was like, hey. She's like, so can I have girl time? And I was like, yeah. Okay. Like, you know, but it was like, yeah, that's my signal. Get out of that. Get out. Go somewhere.
funny.
Like, don't get out of here. And then they talked about all kinds of stuff,
Yeah.
right? And it wasn't like talking trash about anyone. It was just talk, you know. But again, women crave that. I think like so do men. And man, could you imagine like a men's one? I bet the female one's a lot more funny.
We're smart enough to not do that.
Yeah. Or just every guy puffing up his chest and whatever. But again, I think the point is there's just a lot to like the day to day.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be funny, and people could put these together with maybe not an ROI, like a financial ROI put in place, but it is like just so how I talk and process, right? And make it real by speaking it out loud and letting Eli hear me so he knows how I think, and reverse engineering stuff out loud to get myself to a conclusion or the next step in whatever direction we're going. Yep, all good things, but just laughing or just like talking and like getting your week out and getting it off of your chest, dude, that's liberating too.
Yeah, dude,
right? Like that's so again, there's so many different directions podcasts could go, and it can be for you and for your group of friends. But I think again, it starts to catch fire because it's so relatable to people.
It is. Just real people talking. That's it. No script, no agenda, no bullet points.
None.
Real people talking.
None. And you don't necessarily have to say your name, I guess, if you're going to say some stuff so crappy you're worried about corporate America or your job having an issue with it. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like there's just different ways you can go about it. But, man, it kind of sparks ideas for me. Like, dude, we could have one.
Let's talk real quick as we're wrapping up as far as like how to kind of apply this, right? For us, when we first started this podcast or first started thinking about this podcast, we had zero clue on how to do any of it. Fat, obviously, he's running the show back here and the cameras and all this stuff. He's got a good background as far as film, but between the three of us, none of us had really done shit with audio. So
at all.
We had to go and figure all this stuff out. Now, if you're just thinking about doing this, we've got fancy stuff. We've got cameras. We live stream. We do multiple camera angles. You don't have to do all that stuff. You literally just need to get some microphone kits from Amazon. Get a headphone router if you've got multiple people that are listening to it and multiple microphones that are coming into it, and then plug it into your computer, hit record on the recording app. That's literally
And if you got
it.
questions, let us know. We can show you everything that we bought to get it.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
And as far as like business, I know this is, you know, an entrepreneur or if you've got a side hustle that you want to turn into your entrepreneurship, you know, benefit. I think one of the biggest benefits you and I have with our podcast as it relates to real estate is the more people get to hear who you are and hear you articulate and either enjoy you or not enjoy you, I think it does spark interest, you know, and I think we do, man. We grind super hard in real estate. And I think we do have a good grasp on our market and being in tune with everything. So this is also another opportunity for people to hear us articulate, you know, and like you and I are a little bit bigger dudes. You're a little bigger than I am. So you get,
Thanks.
you get a little worse than me.
Right.
But how many times, man, have we been helping a client that heard our podcast or were friends of yours like, dude, this guy Will, I feel like I already know him.
Yeah.
You know, and then
all
they're
the
like,
time. It's
and they
everybody.
joke about how small I am compared to you, you know, but then they're like, oh man, you just weren't what I expected. Like you guys know your shit. And we get that because look, like we're bigger guys with tattoos. We don't necessarily look like real estate per se, but when people have an opportunity to just listen and allow your thought process to brew while they're driving home or whatever they're doing, and go like, hey, I like those guys. I feel like they know their shit. I feel like they're squared away. It just gives that additional comfort level as far as like when we're working with someone. And we had this recently. Someone, I can't remember who it was, and I wouldn't say names anyway on the podcast without permission, but we had a client that was through you, and they were like, hey, this Will guy, like I feel like I already know. Oh, we were on the phone with him. He's like, Will, what's up, man? I was like, dude, what's up? He's like, I feel like I already know you. Your guys' podcast is awesome. And it was like he just started right in with us, and we were kind of giving each other a little bit of shit and here and there. And it's like, I feel like he kind of knows how I am or what's funny or not funny, or that I can take a little bit of like shit given back and forth. And it just allows for that additional layer of comfort with just feeling like someone, hey, you already know us and you enjoy us and we appreciate that. That's going to let me be in my zone. That's going to let me be in my flow state and produce for you how I need to, versus looking over my shoulder and just not sure how you're feeling, or, you know,
the
like,
relationship's starting with momentum. You're starting at a level 5 already. You're not having to build up that 1 through 5 before you really get to
and
know
everyone's
the person.
comfortable and they know you can take criticism or they can have a conversation with you. But again, when you're in that flow state, it just allows you to just crush so much better. So again, so I, you know, if I were to leave this podcast, I know we're it's not too long. I think what do we have, 15 minutes or so?
Yeah.
Cool. So long enough. But I think the benefit is one, two form. Even if you have it just for fun, for your friends in the neighborhood, outside of the neighborhood, just your guys getting together, talking about Bronco games, or just women in the neighborhood getting together and doing a podcast and just having it for a release, I think it's super therapeutic.
Yeah, it is.
Secondly, I think long form content just allows you to express a thought process, which is very teachable for yourself and for others, and to just express how you approach something. And then thirdly, when it comes to like the direct business piece, it's super beneficial in the fact that with social media and people seeing, you know, going to iTunes, going to Spotify, seeing you on social media, you know, them feeling like they already know who you are, and you having an opportunity to put out some long form content where people can hear you articulate and express thought and how you tackle objective. And like when they feel like, hey, I like that guy, it already makes them want to work with you. That's a great start.
It is.
Great start.
And then my last little benefit to that, the little bonus to all of this content that you can put out, is how much
if you
can
sign up now. If you sign up in the next 90 seconds.
Yeah, our podcast course. Is how you can leverage this one piece of content. So if you guys notice, we've got the long form podcast audio only, right? That's on Apple. That's the baseline for everything for us.
Correct.
We're also filming it so that we can Facebook the whole thing, Facebook Live the whole thing. So we have live streaming so people get to see our facial expressions, see our mouths move, see our body language, see all of that stuff, which just adds to the getting to know us factor. And then on top of that, we'll take that long form video content and we'll clip out little 30, 60, 10-minute clips, put those on YouTube, put them on Instagram, put them on Facebook, make little caption videos out of that.
Correct.
It goes deeper because when you're on somebody else's podcast, now you're being exposed to their entire audience.
Correct.
They're sharing that, obviously. You are exposing that person to your entire audience when you share that. And then vice versa. When people are on your podcast, same thing. You're exposing them to your whole sphere. They're exposing you to their whole sphere. So from this one piece of content, I mean, the layers just go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. So if you're crunched for time, you may think, I don't have time to do a podcast. I don't have time to do an hour podcast. You don't have time not to, because you can do that podcast and leverage the hell out of all the little different media angles that you can take with that.
Yeah, whether it's personal or professional, there's just, and again, especially on a professional side, content, and not to just always have a hook, but again, the more people have an opportunity for you to be in front of them, and the more opportunity you have as far as expressing who you are and how you articulate and how you tackle process, the more opportunity you have for people to like you and choose you when that time is right.
And I mean, if you've been blessed with certain experiences in life, good or bad experiences, I'll call it a blessing. If you've been blessed with certain experiences in life and you've lived to see yourself through it and you've learned something and you've taken something away from it, I really do think it's your obligation to share that with other people, because there's people that are going through probably a fraction of what you actually went through, and they're really struggling right now.
Dude.
And just by you sharing your thoughts on that can really help some people out.
I told you about that 19-year-old, right? 19-year-old kid, that text message.
Yeah, your little buddy.
Stupid. He's a good kid, man. He's a good guy, and you know, he's going through some stuff. You know, as far as like sexual preference and just life, and hey, society's negative, and really it's just kind of like the people he's around, and he's young and needs time. But he reached out to us, and him and I had a couple conversations, and now him and I talk once a week, every Friday, and we just run an after action report on the week. What went well, what didn't go well, how can we improve it, and are we still letting others affect us, and just who we're putting around us, and you know, and just he's just like, hey, thanks, man. I just never really had like a male figure per se, and this, and I'm like, hey, you're good, man. You're gonna figure it out, but just being able to connect with him and say, look, man, it all comes in time. You know, like you're going to figure yourself out, and the less you allow others to affect you and the more you put yourself around kind people, the better. But also just understand you got to take certain things day by day, and just some of those conversations that him and I get to have. Holy cow, man.
Yeah.
Super beneficial. And again, we've had like a younger audience from my, at least from my Instagram. We've had a younger audience than maybe I expected at first, but it's also great, man, because these kids that are that age, it reminds me of leaving baseball and going to the Marine Corps, and just how much of a sponge I was to be influenced, and how grateful I was that the people who chose to influence me took it as a responsibility, and they did good by me, right? Like the Marines that were my leaders, and the Captain Sacchettes and the Captain Cooks and the, you know, Captain Shantoshes when they were all captains. Obviously, they're all higher ranks now, but that's what I called them back then. And the people that were in charge of me took it as a responsibility, and I would have listened to anything they would have said within reason, within not murder, not jumping off a bridge. Fuck you. Okay. I'm from Park Hill. I'm smarter than that. Okay. I'm not going to jump off a bridge, but I think you know what I'm saying. Like when you're that moldable and you're just seeking some things and you want to be better, but you don't really know what that is or how to approach it or where, or how long it takes. Like I would have listened to anything. So I'm just super grateful that they took that as a responsibility and they did right by me. So now, man, we've got people that hit us up, even someone like this, man, like there's a responsibility behind doing all you can with this kid. Obviously it's limited. Like I don't know the kid. I'm not going to give him everything. I can't. But just trying to spark some thought in him and just try to push him toward not an answer, but push him toward just learning how to be a thinker. Learn how to make a decision, not tell him the decision to make. And just the responsibility that comes behind that is just being like a bigger brother to that kid and influencing him in the right way, but also not controlling a situation to where maybe he does some things and he takes out of context and he does something negative. But just, again, man, just influencing him and teaching him how to just run an after action report on the week. And, hey, how are we going about making a decision versus me just giving you the decision to make, and it's huge.
It is, man.
And that really makes this podcast worth it beyond business and everything else. So imagine you moms out there, right? Like if you did a podcast with your neighbors and it was funny, just imagine how many moms out there might just super appreciate it because they get to drive home and laugh and just feel like there's similar people to them. Like how refreshing that is. And then they start writing you a message or an email. It's like, oh my God. Like, I just really appreciate what you women do. And I listen to you guys every week on my way home. And I feel like there's women like out there that are like me, and it makes me feel better. And like, imagine just the gratitude you can get from people, and you just never know where your influence is going to land. Just know how humbling and just the gratitude that you have from that.
It's powerful, man.
Super powerful.
It is. I think that's all we got.
That's all we got today.
All right. We'll see you guys later this week.
Powerful. Happy Monday.
We out.